This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire.
The spring election, Eau Claire's City Council Candidates Forum.
This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
All right, thank you everyone for coming and welcome to our Meet the Candidates Forum. My name is Stephen Kelly, representing WQW News 18. I'll be serving as the moderator tonight. I certainly appreciate your attendance to learn more about the candidates that are running for City Council and as well as some of the various issues in our community. That'll be back there. We want to thank the Chippewa Valley Technical College for hosting this event. It's sponsored by the Leader Telegram, WQW News 18, Valley Media Works, that's the new name for the Chippewa Valley Community Television, as well as the Eau Claire Chamber of Commerce. Now, the Eau Claire citizens have a city council election every year. There is a total of 11 council members. Last year, they voted for a current city council president to have another 3-year term. This year, voters will elect representatives to serve on 3-year terms in 5 geographical district seats. In addition, there is an election to fill an opening at large seat that was vacated by a former representative, Eric Larson, I actually think is in attendance today. City Council appointed Terry Weld to fill that vacancy in the next election. We have a printout of district maps over there on the left if you're interested in seeing which area your seat is represented. Now, I will introduce the candidates in just a moment, but first we're going to go over some of the ground rules. Each candidate will have the opportunity for a 2-minute opening statement, as well as a 2-minute closing statement. There are a total of 5 questions, and each candidate will get a chance to answer those questions. You'll have 2 minutes each for those. A timekeeper sitting right here up in front will give 3 signals, 1 minute, and 30 seconds, as well as 1 for stop. We'll try to get you stopped around that time. Now, because of the overall time limitation, we will not have a chance for questions from the audience, but we do ask you certainly to come up and talk to the candidates after our forum. First, to answer the question will be rotated just to make sure that this is fair for everyone. Valley Media Works, you can see the folks back there in the back, are recording tonight's forum. There will be scheduled broadcast times on their website, valleymediaworks.org. Seating order for tonight's forum is determined by the candidates in alphabetical order with each district, as well as the at-large position. All candidates, as I said, will have the opportunity to answer these questions. So let's meet the people that are running. In District 1 over here on the right, Emily Berge and Tim Tewalt. District 2, Emily Anderson, David Klinkhammer. District 3 is Jeremy Gragert and Kathy Mitchell. Over here on the left, District 4, Jill Christopherson and Bob Van Haden. District 5, sitting by himself, is Andrew Werthmann. And at-large seats are Zachary Meives, and Terry Weld. We will begin with 2-minute opening statements from each candidate. Our first candidate up is Emily Berge, and we will move to the left.
Hello, my name is Emily Berge, and I'm running for City Council District 1, which is the north side of Eau Claire. And thank you for being here. I just want to say a little bit about myself. I've lived in Eau Claire for about 16 years. My husband and I met at Stout and worked our way to Eau Claire, where we found internships and never really left the area, I guess. He's at Presto now, he's been there for about 12 years, and I'm a counselor in town. Over the last 12 years, I've been really active in our community, volunteering at our church, with my kids' schools, with soccer coach, with ASO soccer. And that's part of the reason why I'm running. I just want to volunteer or serve the public in a different way, besides to serve in city government. The other thing, another reason why I'm running is I have my master's degree in mental health counseling, and I'm working as a counselor here in Eau Claire. I own my own private practice, and I have I really enjoy my job. I really enjoy talking with people and listening and really hearing their experiences, and I feel really valued, and I feel value in it. I feel honored that they let me in their lives. And I'm this, I guess, a professional listener, some people have said, and I would bring that to City Council too. I also work with couples and groups. I work with businesses. I do some consulting with them, work with employees and employers, and I know how to bridge that gap as well. And people aren't always getting along, maybe. And the goal often isn't necessarily agreeing, but just understanding each other. So I would hope to bring that to City Council as well, and to my constituents on the north side. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Welcome. I have to do two parts. I get to work for Chippewa Valley Tech College, so on behalf of this wonderful organization, welcome. Glad to have you here. And thank you to the Chamber and the TV for putting this together and broadcasting and recording. You know, for me, the community always wins, and I was talking with some of the great people who are up here, and that your vote, sure, we're lobbying for your votes, but you can't lose, because you're going to elect somebody from Eau Claire, and that's what's exciting about council. My family, very similar, started in 1991 when I married a gal who worked at the Chippewa Manor Nursing Home but lived in Eau Claire. We started our family, our kids graduated from North High School, go Huskies, right? And just fantastic, and to see that. And very same reasons, getting involved, you want to say thank you to the community that you've been able to raise a family in, that you've been able to work in and help. My vocation is teaching, my avocation is helping people, and I love to help solve problems. I'm a troubleshooter by trade, and finding ways to fix things, finding ways to put things in order. It's been a great honor. I was appointed in 2015 to council, elected in 16, and really thankful for that opportunity. I look forward to you just getting more informed and talking to you afterwards. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Emily Anderson, and I'm running to represent District 2 on the south side of Eau Claire. I grew up on the south side, attending Mans, South, and Memorial, and I left after high school for college and job opportunities. But everywhere I went, I was so grateful that I had grown up in a community like Eau Claire that had invested in me with wonderful public schools, as well as opportunities to develop my talents, like at the Children's Theater and the Chippewa Valley Museum. I took those talents and skills that had been nurtured here in Eau Claire kind of around the world. I went to Chicago, Illinois, and got a master's degree, and then I taught high school in Madrid, Spain for a couple of years. And then I wound up in New York getting a PhD at SUNY Buffalo. And I decided to come home in 2015 to be closer to my family. And now I own my own business as a writer and editor. And I think my professional skills really translate well and would really benefit council. As a writer and editor, I have to research deeply. I have to look at a whole range of viewpoints in order to come to a single answer to a problem or a solution to a problem. And so I'd like to bring those skills along with listening and communication to my work on council. One of the reasons I'm running is because the city invested so much in me as a kid, and I want to make sure that we in Eau Claire continue to invest in people at all phases of their lives. I want Eau Claire to be a great place for people from all walks of life to have opportunities to grow and flourish. My vision is an Eau Claire for everyone, and again, I'm Dr. Emily Anderson.
Thank you. I'm David Klinkhammer. I live obviously on the southeast side as well. Graduate of UWEC here in Eau Claire back a long time ago. Anyway, I'd like to thank CBTC for making this space available and all the sponsors, as well as all of you for coming. It speaks well of our community. During my 11 years on the council, our city has witnessed an exciting period of growth, as well as the ongoing revitalization of downtown. While recognizing the fact that the genesis for this growth began just before I was elected. But I do take great satisfaction from keeping that momentum going and moving forward. I'm excited by the opportunity to meet the challenges we will be facing, as well as the great opportunities as we go forward. In conversations that I've had both with people in Eau Claire and within the state, I can truly say that as a community we are building something special here in Eau Claire. We're showing other cities both within Wisconsin and beyond that we can get things done. And I want to be part of that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Gragert. I'm a candidate for Eau Claire City Council District 3. I moved to Eau Claire in the year 2000. It was kind of a transformational time in our history, and I ended up being a history major, I think, because of some of the events that occurred in the years as a college student here, and also just appreciating what we have as a community here. I grew up in Stillwater, Minnesota, where history was very important, and the transformation of a community and how people value it was also important. I ended up graduating in 2005, and I lived in the residence hall for a number of years before that, and I lived in the Randall Park neighborhood. But since then, I lived in the 3rd Ward neighborhood, where I live to this day, and moved away a little bit for graduate school at La Crosse, and worked at UW-Stout and lived in Menominee, so kind of have some experience in other communities that I'd like to bring. I've always focused on civic engagement and helping others get involved in the city, and whatever issue that they want to work on. I've certainly had different priorities that have taken me to places like serving on the board of directors for Downtown Eau Claire Incorporated over 10 years ago, and we didn't know exactly if our downtown was going to revive in the way that it is now. And it's been an exciting time to be here over the last 15 of the last 18 years for me, and I really want to kind of take my involvement to the next level and help other people do that too. So I ask for your vote on Tuesday, April 3rd.
My name is Kathy Mitchell, and I am the incumbent council representative for District 3. And I want to thank the sponsors as well, and I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this forum. I moved to Eau Claire in 1978 with my husband and my family. We bought a home in the 3rd Ward where we've lived ever since. I have a PhD in anthropology, and I worked until my retirement at UW Eau Claire. In 1992, I was appointed to the City Plan Commission, where I served 2 terms and chaired the Plan Commission for 3 years. And planning has been a major part of my service to this community. After that, I was president of the Police and Fire Commission for 10 years. So in 2011, when a position opened up on the City Council, it seemed like a logical step for me to take to move into that position. I believe that my experience in both planning and in public safety have served my constituents well, and I hope to move on now to another term on the council. In addition to my regular council duties, I am on the Board of Health, I chair the City Council Appointments Committee, and I am again on the Plan Commission. I'm also the Vice President of the Council and have been elected that for the last 4 years. I'm particularly proud of the work I've done recently on the update to the City Housing Code, the rental registration program, neighborhood revitalization, the Arts Center Design Committee, and other policies relating to the budget process. As a council member, I believe in working hard and being prepared. I think it's important to suspend judgment until I've investigated all the facts and listened to the public. I represent my district as best I can, and when I can't vote the way people want me to, I am prepared to explain why.
All right, we're going to hop over the podium and hear from Jill Christopherson.
I'm Jill Christopherson, and I want to be the City Council representative for District 4. That's the west side of Eau Claire. It would be Cameron Street, North Claremont, and then the developments towards the boundaries of the townships there. I'm originally from South Dakota, and that's something I can't forget. There's a little bit of South Dakota still there in my heart, but I've lived in Eau Claire for more than 30 years now. And I finished my guidance and counseling master's degree at University of Wisconsin-Stout. I've raised my daughter, who graduated from Memorial High School, and I've retired here. I say that I grew up here. A unifying thread that you would find in my work experience is curiosity. My first question when I'm considering a position would be, I wonder what that would be like. And then the question becomes, I wonder how that works and what would make it work better. Over time, I've gained the ability to meet challenges and to accept disagreements, and found that that really builds rich relationships that have changed me and have changed my work. I was a staff member at First Congregational United Church of Christ at my retirement this last year, and that's where I encountered my work with Jonah, joining our neighbors advancing hope. I discovered that idea of needing to be right, or being overwhelmed or overrun by someone who feels that they are right, is really not problem solving. But as organizers, we learned that that right answer is usually somewhere in between those two perspectives. It's the talking and the listening and the waiting for the solution to present itself that is the game changer. It's this experience that I'm going to bring to the City Council, curiosity. I'm Jill Christopherson, and I'm running for City Council District 4.
Thank you to the sponsors of the candidate forum, and a good evening to each of you here and to those who are watching on public television and on the radio. My name is Bob Von Haden, and I'm running for re-election to District 4. My wife Penny and I have lived here for 52 years, raised our 3 children, and are now enjoying spending time with our 4 teenage grandchildren. That's great. As a CPA partner for 33 years with Whiffley Ulrich Berthelsen CPAs, it was my privilege to help build the healthcare division from scratch. I come not only with experience in municipal budgeting, financial skills, and business negotiations, but with the ability to listen, research, and make sound decisions. I am humbled having served the citizens of District 4 since 2003, re-elected 6 times. Helping people and providing assistance with their concerns is fun. I've had the opportunity to serve on the majority of the commissions and committees. These experiences has helped me to better understand how the city operates. A couple of our major accomplishments include restored Rod and Gun Park in Half Moon Lake, built Jefferson ballparks in Miracle Field, and just currently we secured a $5 million grant for a new transit center. I'm running for re-election to continue the progress we have accomplished in making the city a great place to live, work, and have fun in. Your council needs to increase the communication with you through social media before new and amended ordinances are proposed. We obtained your input, your buy-in to reflect your values. Your council needs to hold the line on taxes so your parents and grandparents who wish can remain in their homes. Count on me to be careful with your money. It has been and will be that I'm available to listen to you, secure answers for your concerns, and work to resolve them. I would appreciate your vote on April 3rd. Vote Bob.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here this evening. I want to thank the sponsors as well, TV and Chamber, for hosting us. My name is Andrew Werthmann. I represent the downtown district, district number 5, and have for 9 years now. My wife and I, Carrie, we live on the East Hill and actually just got married this last year. It's been an incredible honor to be a part of the city in such a changing time. And some of the things that I think I'm most proud of are the fact that we have really started to see a shift and a revitalization of our downtown, something that I had always supported, and something that has created thousands of new jobs, brought folks back to our community, helped infill our downtown areas. Some of the other things that I'm proud of is that we've doubled the number of community gardens in our community, and I've helped to lead some of those efforts. That's really about creating community, bringing folks together, getting connection to the land and to food. Last night, actually 2 nights ago, we passed a goal for our city to reach 100% renewable energy, something that I co-authored with Councilmember Beaton and very proud of as well. There's a lot of things that I think we can be excited about for our community that have happened in the last decade, but I also think there's a community that's willing and ready to look forward and continue to be dynamic, continue to look for ways to engage folks, continue to think about how we can be a place that really stands out and shines and makes people proud to call home. So I'm running for re-election this spring, and hope you will support me, District 5. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here. My name is Zachary Meives, and I'm 21, born and raised in Eau Claire. Went to school on the north side my entire life, Longfellow, then DeLong, North High. I went to CBTC as well once I graduated high school, got a degree in criminal justice and law enforcement. There we learned a lot about integrity, professional communications, getting in touch with the community and being the caretakers that police ought to be instead of just being the force behind a lot of things. It made me think that I love to experience the variety of life and to just get out and talk to people. I've also spent some of my time doing human rights activism with groups like Saving Our Sons and Your Whole Baby and some other similarly linked organizations. I have no actual experience in politics, and this is my first attempt, but I'm eager to be able to serve the city and do what I can to connect with the younger crowds through social media. I've grown up in the internet age and think I can bring that experience to the table. And I hope that you'll support me on April 3rd, and hope you have a nice evening here listening to us all tonight.
Good evening. Excuse me. My name is Terry Weld, and I am also appreciative for Mr. Rogers helping organize this and all of our sponsors in the chamber that brought us here this evening. I'm looking forward to the
Sorry. Is that better? Again, I appreciate this opportunity and the opportunity just to answer your questions as we get into the rest of the session. A little bit about me and how I arrived here at my first election. I've lived here in Eau Claire for 45 years, growing up on the north side. Before I headed out to college, I received a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Wisconsin-Stout. And I've been a business owner and a real estate agent for the past 30 years. I've served on numerous community boards, including Main Street Association, the Eau Claire County Board of Health, and the Realtors Association Board. I've also served for 4 years as president of the Children's Museum of Eau Claire Board of Directors. And I spent 6 years on the Eau Claire Plan Commission. The last of those 3 years as the commission chair. Over this past year, I've served as the appointed at-large city council member. I was one of 13 candidates that had applied in the spring of 2017, seeking the one-year appointment, and was honored to be selected to fill the vacated seat. I also currently serve on the Eau Claire Transit Commission, on the Waterways and Parks Commission, and on the Revolving Loan Board. I've enjoyed my first year serving on the City Council, and I've learned a great deal about city governing and the processes necessary to be a productive council member. I say with sincerity, it is an incredibly challenging role to step into, but also a very rewarding role to be a part of. I'm appreciative to have this opportunity to serve and be a part of the successes that this city has realized for the past years. Thank you.
All right, thank you to our candidates. Just want to remind everyone to keep an eye on our timekeeper. Let that introduction be your first chance. We'll have to cut you off if you go over with our questions. Speaking of the questions, number one in front of the council members, candidates. The City Council recently established a tax increment financing district in the Water Street area. At the same time, the city is also defending a lawsuit challenging the TIF as part of the Confluence project. So our question to the candidates, are you comfortable with the city's use of TIF districts? And are there any other opportunities for the city to participate in projects other than with the use of TIFs? And for this question, we're going to start with Andrew Werthmann, work our way right with Bob Van Haden and across.
Thank you. And the TIF financing mechanism is actually something that I have supported in the past, and it's something that allows our city to really encourage new investment, work on strengthening areas that might be blighted in our community, and even more recently figuring out ways where we can help neighborhoods that need new projects, new funding, help them to get that funding. So TIF has been a really important part of what you've seen in our downtown, whether we've been redeveloping areas for housing, whether it's been an arts center, whether we look at a business district and how we bring in new jobs. It's an important financing tool, and I have supported it. But there are also other ways that our community can be involved in encouraging development, and the Tiger Grant is one example that we're getting for our transit center. And in those cases, we can take a lead in writing grants. We can take a lead on bringing developers to the table. And so there are actually different ways that we can do this, but TIF is a very important thing that we have used. And so, to date, I think it's important. It's also important that, again, we're making sure that all folks in our community are lifted up, though. And so that's why I'm proud of the fact that we have started to look at how do we get grants out into our neighborhoods, into places where people feel they need a new playground, they want a new trail, they need a new soccer park, or whatever it is that folks feel, even the dog park on the north side, things like that. Those are the kind of projects that help make neighborhoods better. And I think there's a place for making sure that our community is really investing more and getting more money into our different neighborhoods, not just into our downtown, but everywhere. So, thank you.
My opinion on TIF districts is that to use a TIF district, it should be like the Oakwood Mall. The increase in the tax base will produce sufficient revenue to pay off the city's investment in a short period of time, 7 to 10 years. Many times we have TIF districts that are out for a much longer period of time, and to be effective and efficient, they have to be able to provide an increase in jobs, and more importantly, they meet the but-for provision. In other words, they wouldn't be built unless there was the project would not happen unless the TIF district provided the funds to take care of the blighted area and other things. Another way for us to participate in projects is through the use of our loan pools and debt forgiveness based on job creation. Or we can furnish some land that the city owns as an incentive to people when they come in to look at a project. Another way we can do this is if the investment is great enough, we may be able to use general fund borrowing to grant a low interest loan or no interest loan to help the business meet its equity thing. The other areas that we have, as Councilmember Werthmann mentioned, was our grant programs. Most of our trails in the city of Eau Claire, which we have over 30 miles of trails, which is wonderful to have. The majority of the dollars that come in there are matching grants with the state of Wisconsin, that we would not be able to, as a city, afford to do all of those things, we do it. The other area is private-public partnerships. We did this on our ski hill on the north side of Eau Claire, where the private is investing money and producing it. We furnish the land, they furnish the ski lifts and the other things. And this is what we have to do in the city to become effective and efficient. Utilize our citizens to help us build the best project.
I'm Jill Christopherson. I just think that you've already heard the excellent leadership that our city has and how creative that we have been up until this point of imagining new ways of creating development in our downtown and in our community. and we're seeing a thriving time. One of the pieces of this question that I think is key is the fact that it's diverting our attention to the fact of this lawsuit, and should we suspend using TIF at this time. Eau Claire has really a very rich history, a very successful history of using TIF to anchor development that would not otherwise have taken place. And that was true in the confluence, and it was part of a larger financing package. But I think that we need that suit to play out independently of this conversation. The TIF district on Water Street is already very successful, and that has generated $2 million that is going to help support the historic Randall Park neighborhood. And it will have enormous impact on that surrounding area. So I think that we can trust our leadership to look at all of the resources that are available and applying to that particular project, and that we can do that spurring growth, and then that becomes general money into our fund that we can use to support the community. So I see no reason for a TIF to be questioned. I think they've used it creatively and very successfully.
Well, I am completely comfortable with the city using tax increment financing for projects. Our assistant city attorney, Doug Hofer, just argued our case before the state Supreme Court. And while he wouldn't be allowed to say this, I will say that I am completely confident that that Supreme Court is going to find the use of TIFs constitutional in this state. And I also think that they are going to find our use of TIFs in the downtown area, specific in that area, to be appropriate. Frankly, that's about the only way the city has to gain the money that we need for special projects. I agree that we can use general fund borrowing, but we borrow for our basic capital projects, for our streets and our equipment. And we have to balance those needs against projects that we might consider special, like the Confluence project. So we count on TIF financing to do that. We could talk about grants as well, like the Tiger Grant, but we're still going to have to put some money into that ourselves for infrastructure. And we have to ask ourselves, where is that going to come from? So I am a strong proponent of tax increment financing, and I think the city has been very conservative in its use of TIDs, and I think we will be very careful and continue to be conservative in the future, but we're going to use that type of financing to do what we want to do in this city. I will, anyway.
Well, again, I'm Jeremy Gragert, for the benefit of folks on the radio listening. I feel that, I've been following TIFs for a long time. Obviously, when I was on the Downtown Eau Claire Incorporated board, it was a hot topic, and it still is today. I think it has shown to have success in this community, and there has been some due diligence to make sure it's used appropriately. I do think, looking more closely at the agreements that will be for future TIFs, like in my role as a council member, I'll definitely be looking at it to see how we can make them better. One of the things that has irked folks, including myself, has been that historic preservation hasn't always been a major part of redevelopment. And I'd like to see what we can do with that. I worked for the Chippewa Valley Museum full-time last year and the year before, and really kind of opened my eyes to the way the city has changed and the way it's transformed. But I think we need to really look at our what we lose too when we redevelop it. I think that, I think we should also look at who some of the folks are in our community that we can continue to hear from, and we should continue to listen to regarding these types of economic decisions. My treasurer for my campaign is Thomas Kemp, who used to be in this seat on the city council, and he's the chair of the economics department on campus, and he's always been a good resource for me. And there's a lot of other folks who I'll be looking to for advice, including our city staff, who I think have done a good job of managing TIFs. I also think that grants are a good option. I'm a grant writer and grant manager in my job as an independent contractor with Clean Wisconsin working on renewable energy, and I think that we can, I think my experience can be helpful in that as well.
Thank you. Again, I'm David Klinkhammer. I guess the simplest answer to the question is yes and yes. I'm even more enthusiastic about supporting the TIF policy. I did have a hand in writing our TIF policy a few years ago. It is one of the few tools that is given to a city through state legislation to facilitate economic development. I won't go into all the other things that have already been mentioned about other ways of aiding and helping finance development and redevelopment. But I have to say that TIF financing and the establishment of tax incremental districts are one of the most effective means of facilitating redevelopment and development.
Every time I go downtown, I feel incredibly proud because to me, going downtown and seeing all the changes that have happened, it's a reminder that we're a community that can establish a vision, pull together, work toward it, and make it happen. And I think that's really exciting. And I think that one of the many tools that we have in our arsenal to make our visions happen for our community is TIF financing. And I will not apologize for the success of TIF. I don't understand, I also, like everyone else so far, I don't understand why, what grounds there are for this lawsuit, because TIF financing is used throughout the state of Wisconsin, and it's been very successful here in Eau Claire. In the downtown district in the past 6 years, we've seen 1,000 new jobs and property values have increased by $50 million. So to me, this is an unqualified success, and TIF districts, if used properly, can be wonderful tools for achieving the city that we imagine. In the future, I can see us continuing to leverage the successes we've had with TIF districts to get grants, such as for the transit center. I would like to see us, again, use TIF districts for special projects outside of the downtown area. I think it's time for us even to expand and to create some walkable neighborhoods with local businesses and new jobs in different areas of our community.
I love music. Tracy Chapman talked about TIFs. You might not know that. If not now, then when? And TIFs allow us to do that. Many of us look at getting a home, we take a mortgage because we say our kids now will be using the area. We will build that. And it gives us that type of financing to say, rather than save and wait 20 years to redevelop, we can do that now. So TIFs were established in '75 by the legislature. It is an effective means for eliminating blight, rehabilitating areas, declining property values, promote industry. You know, we see those improvements, you've heard it, improving businesses, improving jobs, creating the infrastructure, and making our areas safe. Other ways we also create that outside of TIFs, our economic development is an amazing part of the city staff where they work with people looking for development and finding opportunities, the land, and et cetera. So the joint agreement also means we have to have agreement between all the taxing parties to create this TIF. So it's not just city council, no, it's the county, it's the schools, it's the city, it's all of the jurisdictions involved. And we've seen it also very successful over in Altoona. As far as the lawsuit, those are things, one of the wonderful things about being on city council, I've been able to see there are different lenses in which to look at something. And you know what? We love seeing those ideas, test it, but I believe, as it was argued, we will be studying that. So I see it in the transit center. That's going to also have lower than market cost housing is part of that project, all part of that. Our CIP is another way that we invest through our comprehensive plan with bridges, the plaza, the trails, and grants. So continue to grow, Eau Claire.
This is Emily Berge again. So I remember, as my other Emily over there was saying, I remember the downtown 10 years ago, and it was not a very pretty place, and it's pretty amazing what has happened over the last 10 years in the investment, and I know the TIF districts have allowed that to happen. I've learned a lot about TIF districts over the last several months. I've taken the time to meet with city staff. I've also read the most recent TID report on the city website. And I've had, through my conversations with budget experts and city employees, I've come to the conclusion, and I've heard that Eau Claire is very responsible with their TIF districts. That a lot of this is used all over Wisconsin, and yet Eau Claire has, and cities use it a lot more than Eau Claire does, and Eau Claire uses the tool very responsibly. And I see Eau Claire continue to use this responsibly, and I would hope they would. TIFs can just be a valuable tool to build our city as long as we continue to monitor their deployment. I think it's one of the tools, though, and there are many ones, as my colleagues up here, or maybe future colleagues have said, that there's grants and there's partnerships that have all been used successfully, too, and I think we can continue that as well. Partnerships with private and non-profit organizations. I will support an all of the above solution to economic development. You know, what are all the options, and let's have a conversation about it. It brings people to the table. There are many creative and collaborative ways to rehabilitate declined property values and encourage businesses besides TIF districts. And I would support all these conversations and dialogues. Thank you.
All right, we're going to come back around the table to Terry Weld.
Thank you. So I had the pleasure of owning a business downtown for many years back in the mid-1980s. And I remember when I first purchased it, I took a walk from the 400 block down to the bridge there on the river as you get to the Eau Claire River. And I remember I counted 26 empty storefronts in 1987. And if you think back, with Oakwood Mall opening and London Square Mall still being open, and what that did to our downtown area, it was amazing. And to see it today, flourishing, no empty storefronts, a waiting list for people wanting to lease and bring their businesses down here, and then all the additional development and building that we see. I think, there is an example of a TIF that has worked. We recently in December closed out another TIF where we saw it from the beginning to the end and officially closed it. In that case, we had a development that was, had less than $1 million worth of value, and when we closed it, it had built up to $60 million in value over that time. Without that TIF district and the availability to help and those builders and businesses and developers, that wouldn't have happened. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big proponent. I'm also a big supporter of our staff. I think we have a lot of smart people that know what they're doing, and I think it's important that we trust that. They've coached us and helped us through these decisions, and I think as a council and as a city, we've made good decisions and the right decisions that have paid off and will continue to pay off for us in the future. Obviously the grants, the public-private partnerships are huge. We have levies. We're restricted as to how much we can increase our taxes and obviously how much we can spend. And so we're going to need to look outside for additional resources.
I believe with the TIFs, as long as they're used responsibly and with popular public support, they can definitely be in play. But the fact that some citizens and or organizations have felt the need that they had to bring a lawsuit against it should at least put the TIF on hold until we determine what exactly is going on, what the issues are, perhaps what the city's overall opinion is. This is a democracy after all. We should let people decide what they want to happen with their town and not just the opinions of the councilors. I also believe that we should try and strive for a voluntary participation between citizens of the town to get them to come in, donate if they want to support a project, and it will allow people to opt out if they don't. It allows people to live by their values and based on what they support.
All right, on to our second question now. And you heard a number of the candidates discuss it as public transportation. It's been on the council agenda recently. You saw that federal grant that was just awarded to the city for the new transit center as well. But there's also been a debate about the impact on bus fares. So our question to the candidates is, what is the future of public transportation here in Eau Claire? We're going to start with Joe Christopherson and then move on to the left.
I'm Jill Christopherson. In the 80s, I was on the Transit Commission when I had a different type of employment, and really the story has not changed from that point in time. And I think that really our issue is to have a different vision of what public transit can be for Eau Claire. That Tiger grant, oh my, what a wonderful gift, and what a wonderful recognition of the quality of writing, the quality of leadership, because that's a competitively given grant. It says that we're doing something really well that has caught the attention of people outside of Eau Claire. So when we get that kind of money, we could just beef up what we're already doing, or we could imagine what is a successful transit system going to look like in Eau Claire. If we are beginning to focus on tourism and making Eau Claire a destination city, then I think that we want to look at our transit as being something that's not just transportation for people that don't have a car. That our transit system wants to be something that supports expanded tourism. It's something that is going to really attract and support a generation of individuals that want a smaller carbon footprint. So I think the placement of that, the advertising of that, the way that we envision how we look at transit, it's not for an underprivileged group of people looking for work. It's going to support something that is already well developed in our community, and it's going to help people explore Eau Claire as a destination.
The future of public transportation is great in Eau Claire, as we were fortunate to obtain the $5 million grant. This will give us the opportunity to modernize, restructure our routes, and make it more efficient and more effective. To enhance the use of public transportation, we must work with the university, the residents, and the businesses to improve our services. We can't remain stagnant and just sit back and let happen what has been happening. We need to get more ridership, because without the additional ridership, our costs become very high. We need to think outside of the box to come up with creative ways to enhance ridership. Example, reduced fare rides for special events, private-public partnerships to raise money for low-income riders. The council is currently looking at coming up with reduced rates for people at certain incomes. And these are things we have to continue doing. So all of the way with transit is to continually, we have $1 million subsidy to the transit system, but that is something that would enhance and make the city greater. So we need to work with the transit committee to ensure that we come up with the best way to provide the best transportation for the citizens of Eau Claire so they can get where they need to, and we put less reliance on cars, and we be able to, as Jill said, reduce the carbon footprint. Thank you.
Thank you. And folks who have been paying attention on this issue know that this is a debate that we've actually had on City Council, which is, whether we're going to raise fees, raise fares for riders. And we actually took a vote on this just 3 months ago. And many of my colleagues voted to raise fares. And instead, one of the proposals that was on the table was whether we ought to move some money from downtown parking ticketing and make sure that our bus fares wouldn't increase. And unfortunately, some of the council decided, you know what, we should continue and invest in downtown ticketing and increase bus fares for people, 20 and 25%, some of them. And we know that 30,000 less rides are going to happen because of that. So everyone's going to tell you up here today that they support transit and that they support more people getting on the bus. When we actually took a hard vote on this, a number of people didn't vote the right way. And that's the truth on this. So I'm very excited by the Tiger Grant. I think the thing we got to do on transit is we got to go all in on it. If we're going to make it successful, we got to go all in. It can't be one of the things where people got to decide I'm a half hour away from my job, I'm going to ride, the hour before so I can make it. We got to be serious about how we invest in our transit. Some cities have looked at going to no fares. They work with a downtown business, they work with a hospital, and they figure out a way to make sure that anyone can hop on the bus wherever they would like. And then you get people's minds, oh, okay, I can get on the bus whenever I like. It's free. Those are the kinds of commitments we need to be making. And unfortunately, we went the wrong way in November. And I think that's something that, it's a debate on council, and it's a debate that we're having. But don't get fooled that everyone here is the same sort of supporter of transit, because they absolutely aren't.
I believe that we need to analyze who, what, when, where, why about the transit systems here in Eau Claire, work with the schools, work with businesses, work with general citizens, and find out where people are going, what's the influx, just the amount of actual usage and need for this public transport, where will be the most effective uses if we're on a limited type level, or if we can increase, in what way will be the most effective way to increase something like that. I believe if we increase bus fares, it's not going to help ridership, that's certainly for sure. But if we do lower it in some capacity, that would be beneficial to get more people to participate, get the citizens to support it more actively. And it's a good thing from a green eco perspective too. We want to reduce the amount of cars and trucks, the need for people to drive around as much as they might possibly want, and just streamline the system that we do currently have here, working with the grants, with public, private partnerships and investments from private donors. That's definitely a good way to move forward with it as well.
I did vote in favor of the fare increase, and I am a supporter of the transit system and want to see it prosper and continue to grow. We operate at a $4 million deficit with our transit, just our bus transit system each year. It costs us $5 million to operate. With 1 million riders, or 1 million rides a year, we take in $1 million in income. That other $4 million is made up by federal and state funding. We haven't had a price increase in our fares in 9 years, which is a long time. And to still continue to run at a $4 million deficit, we needed to make some changes. And I think that the changes that we made were the right changes. We can't continue to depend on that federal and state funding forever. We need to become more self-sufficient when it comes to our transit system. We need to be more dedicated to making it a better system. And I think that's what we're doing on a continual basis. I serve on the Transit Commission now, and it is a topic, a continual topic, to try and enhance the services that we provide and how can we increase ridership. We did raise the fares in January, and since then we've seen an increase in ridership, not a decrease. Also, we have, as a council, now taken the action to try and create a low-income fare. So still raising the cost, or raising the price for those that can afford to ride the bus and pay the increase, and to help support the cost for us to operate it, but still offer a fare for those that can't, with the idea that they have a farther reach and they have better opportunities to improve themselves and increase the ridership.
All right, we're going to go back across the table now to Emily.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me know because I can't really see down there, so appreciate the cue. So I'm very excited about the announcement of the federal grant. It's all over Facebook and my friends posting about it, and that's great. I was served in AmeriCorps here in Eau Claire, downtown Eau Claire, and part of my work was hanging out at the transit center. And it was that was probably 12 years ago, and I worked with runaway youth and at-risk youth and trying to meet up with them. But I remember what it was like, and I'm sure it hasn't changed much, maybe even deteriorated more over the last 10, 15 years maybe. So what I think it should be easy and affordable to ride the bus. And as a council member, that would be the guidepost for my decisions I make. A lot of people depend on the bus. I've talked with lots of people, and they depend on the bus to get to work, to go grocery shopping, to go shopping. And it's not in service on Sundays. That's really difficult for some people to get around. Also, I think when people look at moving here, we want people to move here as we grow. I think they will look at our transit system and see is it an option to ride the bus to go to work downtown? Don't have to worry about parking. I think that's something to think about too, that people, if they're going to work here, they're going to want to live here, and public transit's a big part of that decision. I know it would be for me. The other thing, just with downtown building and development, I know right now it's difficult to find a spot to park when I go to the farmer's market Saturday morning. And if I could hop on the bus and go downtown, right now it's really hard for me to get on the bus where I live on the north side. That'd be pretty great and amazing as well. So lots of room for growth, I believe. Thank you.
Transit is something we do value, and I'll disagree with some of the statements made about council on this. Ridership is up. There's more demand than meeting right now. I want to go back to our current system. I've got students who I work by the campus located by TDK Hutchinson, Silver Springs. They get off at Mays, Floral, and they walk in the winter. That's how far the bus goes. It's something I moved to transit to look at, the school's looking at. There's limited resources. The fund that was increased, or the fare, was 25 cents. We currently subsidize out of the budget over $900,000. I would love it to be free. But the question is, where do we take that from? And what do we not do? Those are always the balances that the council has to look at. Our city staff, as you heard, is working to see, let's set up a program for those who are negatively impacted so that they can apply for that. You may not know it, but even as nice as they are, they don't get 80 miles per gallon in those big buses. They eat, and then their maintenance costs. Some of them are like $800,000 for a used bus. They're very great investments. So we strike a balance. That's what we do on council. My goal for the future, I wonder if we look at other options. Smaller vehicles, more vehicles. If we take a model like Uber and Lyft and we apply that to civic transportation, we don't always need to have transportation for 80 people with bicycles, skateboards. We do have that. We have that option. But is it every ride that has that? That puts a lot of infrastructure and costs that is being misallocated. Is it during all hours? I grew up in the Twin Cities area, loved the bus, rode it all the time. It needs to be effective. Thank you.
Again, I'm Dr. Emily Anderson, and I so appreciate hearing all of the many creative, different points of view. Just from listening to people, I love this idea about Lyft, about tourism, about thinking about how people who are going to move here might want to live on a bus route. There's a lot of great forward thinking happening. For me, this issue of mass transit is really about, as Eau Claire moves into the future, are we willing to leave people behind? And I don't think we are. I think that there are so many people who need the bus services to get to work. Maybe they don't have a car, maybe they can't drive. Our elderly need the bus service to continue to be part of the community, and so do people with disabilities. I work with an organization called Jonah, Joining Our Neighbors Advancing Hope, and I've gotten to know some members of the immigrant community. There are immigrants living here in Eau Claire who work here, who pay taxes here, who aren't allowed to get driver's licenses here. So they rely on the bus to get to work, to get their kids to school, to get to church on Sundays, but there's no bus service on Sundays, so that's a little bit of a problem. And one thing I've learned from working with this group of people, we set up a meeting with the immigrant community and the police, and I was hearing stories of, a mother who has a child with a serious illness who had no way other than driving without a license to get her daughter to the hospital. It shouldn't have to be that way. We need to really invest in our transit in a pretty forward-thinking and visionary way, because we want to be a city where we don't leave people behind. We want to be a city where everyone has equality of opportunity and equal opportunities for transportation.
David Klinkhammer again. It's hard to add much when you're at this end of the spectrum. Just as with other departments, funding is always an issue. It's continual. The city of Eau Claire, and even if you include Altoona in the equation, the density of population is not quite there to run a bus every half hour. Even though if buses run every half hour, more people will ride them. The more convenient it is to ride a bus, the more they'll ride it. But if you double your cost of operating the bus, you're not going to get double revenue to offset that. It just isn't going to work. So, do we need different ways to think about it? Yes, absolutely. The question is, what is the state of, what is the state of public transportation in Eau Claire? It will continue to be funded, but it is so dependent upon federal funding. It's always a mystery to see how much of an impact it's going to be on our budget, on what we fund through property taxes, and how we're going to continue to provide the level of service that we need to. It's going to be a challenge. And I do take exception to the comment made about duplicity in our vote. I voted for the increase, and I also supported the fact that there are a number of people that are adversely affected and need to be able to ride the bus without fare. And we're working on both, but it's not an easy solution.
Hello, Jeremy Gragert. I really feel, even though a lot of people have spoken, I could talk quite a bit longer on this. I serve on the board of directors for the Chippewa Valley Transit Alliance, and I also am a bus rider and serve on the board for the Wisconsin Transit Riders Alliance. So I've been delving into this issue for about 15 years, and the city of Eau Claire really hasn't expanded our city bus routes in 20 years. So depending on how you look at it, we've definitely been kind of coasting along, and I think we need to really look at what we can do to expand. We have the transit development planning process coming up, and it's super important that folks get involved in that process to envision the future of our transit system. I did get also the endorsement of the Amalgamated Transit Union and the bus drivers who serve our city, and I think it's, their perspective is very important because they're really close with the riders and know how we can make improvements. The bus fare issue was definitely a major concern of mine. I led opposition to it, and unfortunately I wasn't successful, but I think that a lot of the council is realizing that their damage has been done on the ability for our transit system to accommodate low-income riders and people of any age, income, or ability. So that's good. There's also an election coming up that can help make sure that that the proposal for reduced fare passes coming up here. I feel that, this Tiger grant was a great thing that we got. I wrote a letter of support on behalf of the Chippewa Valley Transit Alliance, but I don't think the bus transit center is going to do everything we needed to do unless it's redesigned. For example, right now the bus transit center barely fits 10 buses, but it does fit them. And the new one proposed only fits 8. So let's take a look at what we can do to really make sure it serves our needs. Thank you.
Well, there's no question but that Eau Claire needs a public transportation system. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but before I forget and before Mr. Rogers stands up and screams at us, we should talk about rail for just a minute as an important public transportation system, not so much within the city, but the possibility of Eau Claire being linked to the Twin Cities in the future, and what the city's role might be in accommodating that, and how this new bus transfer center might relate to that, and where the place might be for rail to come through. So just so we all know, we haven't forgotten about that. But back to the bus system, I think we need to take a more creative approach to the system. People have talked about smaller buses, maybe even different modes of transportation other than a bus to get people around the city. And I actually think that the grant might spur that kind of discussion. I agree it's not going to solve the problems, but I think as we start looking at that project, we may be able to get some more creative thinking. I also absolutely disagree with the fact that because a person voted to increase the fares by 25 cents that they don't support transit. That's ridiculous. We cannot, as Councilmember Weld said, we can't count on the government. We cannot count on the federal government for that or for a whole lot of other things these days. We've got to start learning how to take care of ourselves. And some of that's going to mean that we have to be prepared for the fact that some of that state and federal assistance is going to disappear. And Councilmember Weld and I are working on a program for reduced rates for low-income riders, but we have to figure out how to pay for that too.
All right, thank you everyone. And for those who don't know about that federal grant, it was a big gift for Eau Claire. We had just about a 6% chance when we applied, so it was a big gift for the city. Our next question is about the living wage ordinance, and last year the city council tabled that. How do you define and view this issue, and what should the role be of the city council? And we heard Mr. Klinkhammer say it's hard to add anything on the last time around, so we're actually going to start with him this time. And we will go over
the living wage ordinance that was tabled was going to affect fewer than 30 employees. They were seasonal part-time workers. And in my experience, most people don't take seasonal part-time work with the expectation that they're going to get a living wage. If you're going to define living wage, you have to put it in the context of who's going to be affected. If we're talking about just city employees, the only employees we have that don't get a living wage are the people that are seasonal part-time. If we're going to apply a living wage to all contractors that do business with the city, that's just a whole different definition. Just taking, for example, paratransit, many of the drivers are retired, part-time, seasonal workers, or at least part-time workers. And if there is a major shift in their income, where the cities may not be in a position to be able to provide that additional cost offset, and so it's going to get passed along to some of the more vulnerable parts of our community, the people that are elderly and have less resources to ride paratransit. They're gonna have to pay more. So who are we benefiting? The employees or the citizens? Or who are we most adversely affecting? So it's not a simple, straightforward question, and so in order to define it, you have to know what the scope of it is.
Emily Anderson's everything.
I fundamentally believe that an honest day's work deserves an honest day's pay, and that if you're willing to work full-time, you should be able to pay your rent and buy groceries. That's not always the case in Eau Claire. That's not always the case across the country. The National League of Cities has researched and looked into this question of how can we improve economic mobility and help make the dream of people being able to be paid an honest day's work come true. And one of the things that they identified is that cities can do is to become a model employer, an example of an employer who treats employees fairly and pays them a living wage. And this then puts other private employers in a position of having to compete with the city so that it brings up wages for everybody. And we can get closer to that dream of living in a city where people who work full-time can actually support their families. So for me, the living wage is very much a question of, are we willing to do what we need to do to lift families out of poverty and make sure our workers are taken care of? And I know there's an idea that somehow we'll have to cut services elsewhere if we do this, but I don't think that's true. At the county level, they already made this decision. The county board passed a living wage law for all of their workers and contractors, and they actually wound up saving some money by developing some in-house and more innovative ways of providing services. So I think we can do both. I think we can continue to provide high level of services and pay a living wage.
Thank you. I was in that vote, as many of the other votes we're talking about. It was tabled on the action on living wage. It's important that, you know, the movers actually they wanted to remove it because it wasn't going in the direction they wanted, and I understand that sort of thing. But it would have only, as Councilmember Klinkhammer pointed out, only applied to very few workers for the city. You know, the limit that city council can do can only apply to the city. It can't apply to all citizens. So that living wage would not be for everyone in Eau Claire, but only if you're connected to the city in some way and however that legislation might be. It does draw money from other areas. The problem in Wisconsin is we cannot raise taxes. We don't have that authority, so we have to transfer them from one place to another. I teach at Chippewa Valley Tech College. The demand for jobs, the demand for our grads are very, very high. And we see that very effective. So I believe a good economy, a good investment in development brings those jobs to our people. We have shrunk our city greatly. We have far less city workers, and that is the trend. We do more with less. It's a very efficient organization, and that's what happens with the camp. I really think that that needs to be something done at the state level, so it applies not to just somebody who works for the city, not for someone who has a contract with the city, if that's how it was written, but it applies for every citizen, because I don't like to see a segregation that it only fits for those who can get into this one employer. I like the direction, but I need to see it at the state level. Makes it fair for everyone, supports everyone. Thank you.
This is Emily Berge again. As we talk about living wage ordinances, as a small business owner, I do understand that we have to be mindful of the concerns of the business community and their ability to keep their doors open when they want to, as they pay their employees. However, I think we can use a balanced approach with stakeholders from the public and private sector, and the city can and should play a leading role as an organization that pays all of its employees a fair and livable wage. Many Eau Claire families are having a hard time making ends meet, and I hear stories about this a lot. I would support mirroring the great work done by Eau Claire County, as Emily said, that they've already passed this and it's been a success. Their living wage is equal to a percentage of poverty income level that is set forth annually by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The county has taken a sensible approach and a balanced approach by phasing in the implementation. So they're being smart with the way they're implementing it. According to the Clear Vision Poverty Summit, over 17% of our residents are living in poverty. So this is people that we share our community with. It's something to be mindful about. So I strongly believe that working collaboratively, the city needs to lead on this issue on behalf of our residents. Thank you.
Can we go back across the table? Thank you.
This was one of the very first things that I was exposed to on my first week on city council, was this topic, and I'm like, wow, this is going to be interesting being on city council, because it's such a difficult decision for all of us to make. And I agree, I think some of this has to be more of a state decision or a federal decision. I agree people should be paid for a fair wage. I think that we have hired people to build this city to be such a great city right now, and so successful and thriving. And that's because of the people that we've hired to help build that. They have to be able to afford to live here then, to enjoy it just as well as we do. And often the case that maybe isn't true. So I think it's important that we try and find a happy medium, a way to make it so that people can provide the services and continue to help build Eau Claire, but then also still be able to afford to live here. I think that as we keep moving forward with this topic and how we get to the solution is really going to be a difficult thing until we see other municipalities in other parts of Wisconsin stepping up and being a part of that. And so we have a level playing field across the board with everybody. And I think that's probably where it starts. I think if we initiate it, I think that's great, but we're going to need the state and federal government to really push this through to make it happen.
I believe that the city employees and contractors, anybody that's affected by this living wage ordinance, ought to be paid what is at least within a reasonable market value that we could assess from other cities, maybe from businesses that operate in the same sort of field. I know some people, I used to work part-time with FedEx Ground here in Eau Claire, and I know people that could only get that job working part-time. They either had other obligations that they had to attend to, or perhaps their family, the health concerns that they may have had, that they were only able to work like a 4-hour shift instead of a full 8. And they deserve to be paid at least the same that the people that could work full-time should be able to support a family, because if you don't pay these people who might only be able to get these sort of jobs a decent livable wage, then they're going to struggle, they're going to be in poverty, and that's not going to help the community overall that way.
Thank you, and we've heard a lot of different perspectives. I'm actually one of the folks who helped lead the charge on this issue, and having seen the County Board of Eau Claire pass a living wage ordinance, I knew that it would be doable for our city to do the same thing. Now, what folks listening at home, watching TV and here tonight need to understand is it really does come down to your definition. The hope was, when it first started, that it could cover roughly 230 employees at the city who are part-time and seasonal. In addition, it would cover contracts that we hold with outside entities. And additionally, if we have TIF districts, that we require businesses that are in TIF districts to pay their janitorial staff, their cleaning staff, a living wage. It could have potentially impacted many, many hundreds of people in our community if we had done it how the county board had done it. So that was the proposal. Now, it was going to cost over $200,000. That's a lot of money. But guess what? We have over $100 million budget. in our city. We have a lot of money. But we make choices about where we're going to spend that. So, for example, last year we decided to buy a military vehicle for our police department, even though we already have 2 in our county. $60,000, just like that. So we make those choices. And this comes down to how much are people getting paid for their hard work. How much are our neighbors getting paid for the hard work they do every day? And it could be a mom that has 3 jobs. And she's trying to make it. One of her jobs is paying her $9, $8. We have people riding some of our seniors around impaired transit starting off at $8.25. That's not enough. And people are saying, well, we want the state and the federal to take action. Well, I'll tell you what. It used to be that local municipalities could raise their own living wage, and that was actually the way that we encouraged the state to take action. We don't have that right anymore. But it used to actually be the grassroots, the folks who you see in the grocery store who are elected to city council, who are the ones who are helping to raise wages, and we're not seeing action from our state or federal. It's on us.
We need to continue working to attract businesses that will employ talented people and pay a living wage and good employee benefits. The city of Eau Claire should be an example for all of businesses by paying their employees a living wage, good benefits, providing excellent working conditions, and treating all their employees fairly. And they do, as was stated. The only ones, there are a nominal few that weren't up to the full amount. And our staff, within its own departments, took it on their own hands, within their own operating budget, to give an increase to many of these people that were at the lower end of the spectrum. And that's what you have to do to make it work. There is only a limited amount of dollars that are available to pay for the operating costs of the city. We have levy limits, and the only way we can get in additional money is through our construction cost index. So we have a factor there of how do we do this. So if we turn around and say, okay, let's drive up the salaries and increase our budget as an operating cost by $200,000 or $300,000, what do? Who do we take this from? Do we cut our police, fire, other things? We have to evaluate this. The city has. But it is imperative that the city be a good example for the rest of it. And we are, as we said. 99%, well, all our full-time employees are paid more than a living wage. We only have a very few, and those we even made adjustments for. The other things, the city should work with all businesses so that they can become more successful and be able to afford to pay their employees more. The city should purchase as much as locally. In other words, spur the economy in the city. This is how you do it. If businesses make more money, they will pay more in salaries. And so we have to help them.
I have just a tiny bit of sympathy for Mr. Klinkhammer. This is a loaded question, and I think it has a lot of passion behind it, and it really would benefit our community to come together on this particular issue. I need to speak on behalf of the people that are working those 2 or 3 jobs. Our United Way had statistics this last year that talked about 17% of Eau Claire's residents are below poverty. 17%. And then you add to that 31% of our population is working poor. So they are working probably 2 or 3 jobs, and they aren't able to make a living. The budget for a family of 4 to pay rent would be $57,060 a year. So for a family of 2 working adults and 2 children to pay their rent and not pay anything into savings, they'd have to be making $12.25 for a single, or $28.53. So just imagine that. Imagine those numbers and the other conversation we've been having about the fabric of our community. The city government really does have the ability to set a goal, a standard, a vision for what we want for our whole community. And by setting that example, we allow others to follow it. Courage can be contagious, and I think that's really our job in this case. But it needs to be carefully done. It needs to be widely talked about, but it's possible. we really need to do better for our citizens than we're doing right now.
This is Kathy Mitchell speaking. I'm not sure I've said my name tonight, so I better see it at least once. I'm going to talk first on and agree that the city can be a leader in this regard, in the sense that we want to recruit and retain the best possible employees. And in order to do that, we have to provide the best working conditions, the best equipment, and competitive wages. And if we do that, then others in the private sector and others in the city will have to compete with those wages, and we will, in that indirect way, be able to raise wages in the city. The biggest part of our budget is salaries, and the biggest decision that the council makes each year when responding to the city manager's budget is what the salary increases are going to be. And it would be my opinion that we should use whatever levy flexibility we have, which isn't a lot, to increase wages. And we've started that this year with the recent union contracts. It's not a lot, but it's more than we have been paying all the years that I've been on the council. And I would hope that we could continue to do that. To be clear, all of our city employees make a living wage as defined by the county and by other measures as well. In fact, many of them make quite a bit more than that. And the issue of whether to extend that and how to extend that to part-time and seasonal employees is not just as simple as extending it, because when we start raising salaries on seasonal employees, then the money for that has to come out of the fees that people pay for the pool, for recreation, for parks, and it's a complicated discussion.
Jeremy Gragert, candidate for District 3. This district is actually includes the UW Eau Claire, and as a college student, I was an advocate for our city increase in the minimum wage in 2005. As a senior on the Student Senate, we actually marched downtown and wrote letters to our council, and we managed to pass that by one vote. I think the state ended up taking local control away like weeks later after we did that as a community. So for us to count on the state and federal right now on this is questionable. I feel that the living wage ordinance that was passed by the county was a really good law. I was involved in helping to craft it and move it forward through committees, and I feel that with the Meals on Wheels program, for example, as being one program within the county that transitioned from being a contractor provided service to being a county provided service, it ended up lowering costs and increasing participation. And improving the quality of service is hopefully something that we see along the way with that too. So that's really, making sure that contractors with the city are included with this is really the big part. There is the paratransit service that they get paid a fraction of what our bus drivers get paid. And I think that comes out and is very evident for the folks that ride. Like sometimes you know your place in society based on how much the person who's serving you and helping you is getting paid, because they can't take care of their own needs effectively either. So I think it's a very important issue, and we all know that wages could be higher in Eau Claire, and the city does need to lead by example.
Thank you, everybody. Our fourth question tonight, and possibly the city's next big project, is the Silent Take Center. It's along Menominee Street, and it's being developed by UWEC in partnership with the YMCA and Mayo Clinic Health System. So this is a two-part question. The first is what the city's role should be moving forward in this project. And the second, do you think the city should ask the legislature for authority to establish an exposition district, and that is given the ability to levy hotel and food and beverage taxes to help pay for an expanded events convention center? For this one, we're going to start with Zachary Meives and move left, and then come back around the table to Ms. Berge.
I believe that the city council should definitely get involved, help organize with the various groups that are involved in this project, but should mostly keep a hands-off approach. I feel like they probably can handle it on their own accord, and they'll do what is seemingly best for the local community, for profits, for all of that sort of stuff. I don't, however, believe that any increased taxes or that any legislation should be pushed to help this. If we want to become an attraction to people from outside, raising prices on just about anything that is to do with the tourism, with the pulling in outsiders, is not going to attract people as much as leaving it either as it is or maybe even lowering it.
A lot of cities have prospered with convention centers. Certainly we would prosper as a community with a convention center. The amount of money and tourism and dollars that are brought to the community because of it are obviously something that we need to be a part of, or at least be in the discussions of it. I know that there was the idea of the levy or the tax, coming onto the hotels and restaurant recently was suggested and then pulled off the table for the city of Eau Claire. I know that the biggest concern there was, I think, just the communication on how it came about and how it was presented to those that would be participating in it, the hotels and the restaurants and those that would be, charged with having to place those taxes on their customers and clients. So, is it a matter of a city decision? Like I said, I think it does affect our city. I think that we want to see it be done right and smart decisions being made. And I think for the most cases in some of the larger communities that do have the convention centers, they've depended on that tax to be maintained and bring in what's necessary to keep it going.
This is Emily Berge again. Well, I'm excited about the developments, the Sontag Center. I've talked to Ken Bennis, the recently retired director of the Y, and he's very excited, and we've had some really great conversations about the new building and other ways that the city could possibly partner with nonprofit organizations here in Eau Claire. In fact, I'll take this time to say that I'm honored that he has endorsed me for city council, so I'm proud to say that, and I'm very honored for that. But I think this is a great example of how the city did partner with private and nonprofit organizations. I think this model of partnership we can use in other areas of the city as well, like the north side. There's lots of businesses up there that would benefit, or a new business district, or something else where we could look at partnerships. As far as advocating for change in Madison, I like to see the legislature grant us as much local control as possible to meet our needs for development as a growing city. And I know I've been reading about this in Lear Telegram, and I know that the chamber has pulled back on this bill. And I think that's to allow for more stakeholder dialogue, and I think that's smart. I always think more table discussion, as long as they invite community stakeholders to the table, and having that dialogue is a smart idea. At the end of the day, the proposal will lead to a referendum if passed, so it would still be up to the citizens of Eau Claire to pass it. So it's a good mix of democracy. Thank you.
These questions really have a center that we have to look at. We've talked about transit. We've talked about all sorts of services. And I think we have to distinguish what the city can do and what the city can't do. Living wage, housing, we'll be talking about. Is the city to the rescue? I think the city has to be more in the position of the facilitator. you know, we've got some interest in this development. Let's see how that goes so that we can see what they come up with. When you think about, you know, it's easy for us to think, boy, if you raise that, people wouldn't come, or this might happen. I got a feeling that US Bank Stadium cost a few shillings more than what we have in mind. And I can tell you from my children who live over there, it was packed. There was no place. It was just thriving. So the idea of a center has some great support. But I think when we look at the expansion, we can look at the total cost. And if we are going to invest, how is it going to be repaid? And we have to also look at the benefits, the jobs, the internships, that sort of thing it'll bring the community. But it does increase our cost of doing business. The utilities, the infrastructure we have to put in, that might fit in some sort of a TIF or TID. But we wait to see how it flares out. The city is working on a study, and that's something the city can do to see if it's a good area for expansion, to see if it works in talking with partners like Visit Eau Claire and the Chamber, so it makes a smart sense. So being a facilitator and bringing partners together, that's something we definitely do and have a great track record of.
We've seen great success focusing on our downtown redevelopment, and I think it's time to expand our successes and look beyond that. And I'm excited to anticipate new changes such as a proposed event or convention center, which I think could really add to our city. I think we should absolutely ask the legislature for authority to establish an exposition district that could levy hotel and food taxes, but I don't think we should have to. And I think that's what's really frustrating me here is I think this is an issue that has to do with local control of our democracy. This is our community. We are the people who are going to be immediately affected. Our local leaders are the people that you're going to run into out at the mall or the grocery store, so you can hold them accountable, and it might be slightly uncomfortable. But I really think that that we deserve to decide what taxes we pay in our community and what services we want. And I think a referendum is a great way to do that, to see if there is public support and if people are willing to support that. So I definitely think that we should ask for this authority and see what happens and see where the public sentiment lies with the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. David Klinkhammer again. There are two parts to this question. One, what should the city's role be in the Sonotag development? And the other is, should we support the exposition district? And it has, I think that we should have the option to. I agree totally with the fact that we need to have a meeting of the minds on this issue. But Eau Claire is a destination center. Our hotel, motel revenue, tax revenue is continuing to increase. And this mechanism that we're talking about has enabled many cities, well, I don't know how many, but certainly the city of Milwaukee to build the Miller Park. It's enabled Green Bay to do the renovations to Lambeau. And it has spread the cost of those innovations and improvements to not only the residents that use the hotels and the restaurants and bars, but all the people that come visiting and spend their money in our community. So, and it will have to be passed by referendum. All we're asking for is the legislature to give us the opportunity to do that. So I think it's reasonable. As far as what we should be involved in as a city with Sonotag development, until we see what it looks like and what they're expecting, all we can do really is just facilitate it, as Councilmember Tewalt said. We can help when we can and encourage. And if it meant getting a better facility in convention, the exposition district could help.
Well, Jeremy Gragert, candidate for District 3. I think it's very exciting to have a project like this be proposed. It shows that we're willing to be bold and look to the future as a community. And the public-private partnership concept is still a relatively new thing at this scale for our community. The Pablo Center at the Confluence is not yet complete, and yet we keep finding areas where maybe not all the money that was needed to build it was really upfront and was transparent. And so that's one of the issues with public-private partnerships, is that they're potentially not as transparent. So we kind of need to work on that if we're going to go toward the city getting involved. I think one of the other issues is that we need to look at the operating expenses of these major buildings that we're talking about. I focus on renewable energy, and our city has started to take some steps. We've made a major commitment this week to move toward 100% renewable energy, and I see a facility like the Sonntag Event Center being a great opportunity to include renewables, include solar, so that we can reduce those operating expenses and make sure we don't have something that we can't afford in our community. I think transportation is part of that too. How do we look at comprehensively? How does a project like this fit with everything else we need to do? So there are investments that the city is going to have to make. We just actually, the city is just about to approve a new bike trail along the river there. And so the costs are there, and I think the willingness is there in the community, but we really need to have the conversation. We really need to involve people in the design phase more. We need to make sure that it's something that everyone can get behind.
Kathy Mitchell, I imagine that there will be some infrastructure opportunities for the city as this project goes on, but really that project is something that the university, the Y, and the Mayo Clinic are working on primarily. If and when they're ready to look at zoning, parking, and site plan issues, I hope that we will be as helpful as we can be to see that those plans move rapidly through the Plan Commission and onto the City Council as they might need to be. I have to admit, the only thing I know about an exposition district is what I read in the newspaper. That got a little bit ahead of most of us. We weren't consulted at all on that or even knew it was happening. So I think that we need more conversation. People in Eau Claire like to talk about things before they become settled, and that's a good thing. And so I think Visit Eau Claire, the others involved in the tourism industry need to have a good conversation. And I'm not sure the city is the one to ask the legislature. The chambers seem to be wanting to take the lead on that, and I think that perhaps they should continue to take that lead.
I think that the city, with the experience we've had on the Confluence project, is experienced and able to observe as this package comes together. You have three very powerful partners that are developing something that was part of the Clear Vision plan 10 years ago. So the community has already expressed a desire for the Sonntag development, and I think the city, with the experience in another multi-partnered project, can observe this and participate in the way that it best benefits the city. But I do think that there will probably be some role there. I really appreciate what Jeremy said about beginning to look at our use of renewable resources so that anything that happens in our community does not expand our carbon footprint. And I also liked the idea that there's now a new idea about the exposition district. Even though it kind of got ahead of itself as far as a great idea, they were able to see that some of their important constituents and stakeholders had something yet to say. But I think here's another very creative way for people who would directly benefit from this project could participate in its funding. So I think that's a great conversation to continue, and I think the city should watch with a hopeful eye as to how we can participate.
Bob on Haden, District 4. The city should work with the UWEC, Mayo, YMCA, Visit Eau Claire, and businesses to develop a plan, private, public, that makes the most sense for the area. Right now, we have numerous plans and designs out there, but nobody really knows what should be built. How big, for what? We do not want to create a new entity that will distract from our existing services. Hobbs Ice Center, the new Pablo Art Center, other businesses. But we want this operation to enhance them. So what I'm saying here is that it's not that we don't want the event center and go forward with it, but we need a formal plan to know, okay, how big? Should the event center be for 10,000, 7,000, 5,000, 2,000? How should it be designed? What will be the benefits for everybody? Once we determine what the city of Eau Claire and the area can afford or handle and operate, then go forward with the project. And that's where I'm saying we have to all work together to do it. Talking about the exposition district, again, if you're going to do this, make sure you make it large enough. We can't just put it in a small area so that we make businesses non-competitive. Dairy Queen, I'll use that as an example. They're right across the street. Well, we only include them, but we don't include the other Dairy Queens, it's unfair to them. And the last thing is, why it should go to a referendum. We've heard a lot of comments from a lot of people saying, we've got a lot of people in Eau Claire in poverty. Now, if we raise the cost of meals to go out to eat in the restaurants, movie, other things, whatever the tax is applied to, how do they afford to pay it? So there's a lot of things that need to be discussed. It's a great idea. We should go forward with it, but we got to do it in a proper manner.
And Werthmann, District 5. And I'll agree with some of the other things that were said earlier. I think there's a lot of conversations that need to happen before we figure out exactly what the city's role is going to be in this project. I'm not as familiar with the exposition district conversation, and frankly, sometimes I'm misreading the newspaper and I'm hearing it through other sources. So, one of the things I have heard though is that it has worked in other cities. Madison and Milwaukee have both used districts to their benefit. And the reality is that when you spend on things like an event center, your return is 6 to 1. So you put $1 in and you're at $6, and folks who come to the community or spend dollars in your community, whether that's for your hotels, your restaurants, whether that's going to a sporting event at the center, it's an investment. You make money as a city, but it's absolutely right that we have to figure out what is the level that we would want to do it, if in fact we want to go to an exposition district, because we don't want to price people out of things. It has to be at the right level. And I know in Madison, they tried many years, and finally they found the right level that people, I think they passed their referendum something like 51%, 52%, which is very close. But essentially they found a level that folks said, this is what we want to invest. But there's a lot of conversations that need to happen. One thing that we will, without a doubt, be involved in is what is the quality of the building? How is, or the facilities? How are they planned along the riverway? How does it connect to our infrastructure? Is it a green building, and if so, at what level? Those are the things that we directly have an impact on as a city. I'd be open to this exposition district. I just think there's a lot of conversations and a lot of folks in our community who need to have a say in it before our city council can really take a firm stance.
Our fifth and final question, and one of the local challenges of an expanding employment base and workforce is adequate and affordable housing, both for renters and for first-time buyers. Now, we've seen that the city has updated the housing code this past year, but the council has also rejected a number of housing developments. So what is the city council's role in ensuring a sufficient amount of acceptable and affordable quality housing? We're going to start with Kathy Mitchell, who will right, and then come back around the table.
Well, I'm well aware of the need for more housing in our community. We need more housing for everybody, for people who are first-time home buyers, for low-income people, for homeless people, for renters, everybody. We have a shortage of housing. And I'm not aware of many housing projects that we have not approved of lately. I can think of one, and that was a bad project. And even though we need housing, we're not going to lower our standards and just build something that is not up to the standards that we're used to in our community. There are some things that the city can do. We've talked about the Tiger Grant tonight a million times, but that includes about 130 apartments that are going to have what's called workforce rents, which is not quite, a little bit higher than affordable, I'll just say for now. Our TIF policy allows us to use TIF funding for housing rehabilitation in neighborhoods that are close to the center of the TIF project. We might be doing that in the Randall Park area, but we might be able to do that in other parts of the city as well. I think we could make some zoning changes to make infill development more accessible to developers. I think that it's important for us to take this also as a good sign, because we have people moving into the community now for jobs. Hutchinson Technology is hiring, and people are wanting homes. It's a good thing, but I agree that we need to do whatever we can as a city to help developers provide that housing.
Jeremy Gragert, District 3. I serve on the Third Ward Neighborhood Association Steering Committee, so we talk about housing quite a bit. I was one of the folks that showed up at the public hearing downtown at City Hall on the housing code update, which I think was a good step forward. I actually live in rental housing, although it is owner-occupied as well, and we put a lot of money into the house. Lived down in the Third Ward, where my house is from 1880. And I think, and I grew up in a house from 1881 in Stillwater, so I kind of know, that there's a lot of investment that can be made in existing housing, and a lot of benefit that we can see from preserving housing that we already have. And Stillwater, Minnesota, I think is a good example of that, and I think the Third Ward neighborhood is too. I think there's a few things that we've done that maybe don't help us along the way. Councilmember Mitchell mentioned, infill development, and I think that's really important. But the council just recently increased parking requirements for multi-family buildings and off-street parking requirements, and that reduces the ability for a developer to find a place for infill development. And as a result of these types of requirements, my backyard is actually a parking lot. And I don't think that is necessarily a great benefit to our community or to people in the neighborhood. I also think that some of the designs of our buildings need to be looked at more closely by the council, and maybe we need to take some purview that the state maybe feels they're covering. One of them is the issue of buildings being built without windows in the bedrooms. It might sound surprising, but the Aspenson, Mogensen Hall on Water Street, most of the bedrooms for those students do not have windows, and that is a grave concern of mine.
David Klinkhammer again. I'm kind of with Councilmember Mitchell on this. I can't remember serving on the Plan Commission how the denial of many developments. The one that was most recently turned down by the council was redesigned and more conforming to the zoning, and it was approved. When a building development comes forward and it requires a rezoning, you have to tread rather carefully, because there's a lot of thought that goes into zoning, and it's how our community, how we as a community want our community to grow. So you just can't arbitrarily approve one that isn't consistent with the zoning. I served on a health impact assessment as a representative from the redevelopment authority. It took almost a year as we did a health impact assessment on the West Riverbank, which is now the Cannery District. And we spent a fair amount of time in conversation in those meetings talking about affordable housing in that future development. So affordable housing is an important component, and I think probably one of the next opportunities for that conversation to go farther is with the transit center. There could very well be an affordable housing component in a private-public partnership with that development. We do what we can. Thank you.
I think we need to be clear what we mean by affordable housing and really think about what that means here in Eau Claire. You know, if you look at a national level, our housing stock is not super high priced, but our wages here are low, and so housing options are out of reach sometimes for families. I think one of the questions it seems to me that the council has been grappling with is poverty within the purview of council? Is this a problem for the council to get involved with and solve? And I think absolutely yes. Who better than people in our community to help one another and to bring everybody up together? And I think housing is one of the key ways of doing that. I spoke with a woman just the other day. She'd gone to college here, and after she graduated, she and her husband looked around for a place to live, but they couldn't find any place that they could afford. The only places they could find were kind of, they were sort of run down, you know, sort of student-oriented housing, and so they wound up just moving to Chippewa. And so I think another piece of the puzzle is to think about, you know, the existing housing that we do have and the quality of that housing. Is that housing safe? I walk around a lot in the winter, and I notice when I see occasionally, I know most of our landlords are great landlords who are invested in their properties, but I notice when I see landlords that aren't shoveling their walks, right? And that affects all of us. So I think another piece of the puzzle for council is to look at how we can engage landlords as well in committing to safe housing and then also affordable housing, which we can develop through some of these public-private partnerships and through some of this TIF and grant financing that people have been talking about. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience coming out tonight. You're hearing a lot of words. You're getting a good view of the complexities that face council, and that's one of the things I've enjoyed about being on council, District 1. I also think the question got phrased a little bit different. There was one project up on Jeffers, the Sherwood Heights development that was asking for a rezoning, which is different than the development. So first they have to get the rezoning, and that wasn't fitting that neighborhood. 90 people, signatures, they're writing, calling. Don't do this. This is the house we purchased, and we have to make those decisions. And I said, no, that doesn't fit. They came back with a plan that had a transition, and the council approved that. They did approve that. On the north side, we now have coming 240 homes, counting that, and the Princeton Valley expansion. These are twin homes. These are single-family homes. We've got a lot of growth in this town, and we're seeing it. And we have to always understand there is those divisions between private and public. So developers are buying land, they're investing the money up front. Boy, they hope it sells. Building costs, I did not like to hear. Councilman Weld is very knowledgeable on this, and he kept bringing up how expensive it is to build. So I'm excited about the Tiger Grant, looking at ways we can put in affordable housing, use things like the TIF, but it is a challenge that we have to look at. So we've kept the community from urban sprawl. We've done that, what we call inland, where you're building it. We have the utilities there. We have a wonderful community, and we continue to make it safe in the streets and design, and hats off to the planning committee. they said stop.
I'm Emily Berge for District 1. So I've been attending the city council meetings, and I've noticed that the most populated meetings are the ones when there's been a development proposal, and all the neighbors, most of the neighbors come out, and I think this shows that people want to talk about this. I think sometimes people feel left out of the conversation and are surprised, and I think there could be more dialogue happening with the public and the existing houses that are there. I've seen this in the north side as well. I mean, development is very good and we need it to happen. We want our city to grow, but I think we could include more people in the conversation as well. I think we do need to work at all different levels, including the neighborhood level, and to address the need for quality and affordable housing. We need to expand affordable housing options, and as Emily stated, I think we need to define what affordable housing is. You know, $100,000 house might be affordable for some and not very affordable for others, and something to very much pay attention to. I recently read the book Evicted. I don't know if any of you have read it. It was a very good book, very eye-opening about housing in Milwaukee. And it brought up a lot of good issues and potential problems or current problems with tenants and landlords. And again, I think Emily said we have very good landlords here, and but just to keep that conversation going too. And the city should continue to increase tenants' rights, to increase their stability and protection, and include our landlords in the discussion. And I think just to continue the dialogue with the neighborhoods, landlords, renters, get them all to the table, because people, and I've talked to people on the north side where they feel disconnected from that process, so we need to change that. Thank you.
Terry Weld, again, for the at-large election. You know, I guess starting off with the rental side of our housing, certainly the updated housing code that was completed last year is going to make a huge difference, I think, overall in the quality and safety of our existing housing. But as far as moving forward, you know, as a community or as a city, I think it's important that we are proactive with this subject. I think we need to start looking at our infrastructure, and do we need to start pushing our boundaries out? Do we need to start extending our water and sewer services to neighboring areas where we can create more housing opportunities for developers? Do we need to change our zoning requirements and reduce lot sizes or minimum setbacks? I mean, I understand we're not in favor of those things, but at the same time, we're going to need to make some changes, because the cost to build is just getting so expensive now that affordable housing is not attainable. And we're seeing that more and more as this market evolves, as our community continues to thrive. It's getting harder and harder for a person to buy a home without going into debt or going way over their budget. So I think as a community, it's important that we look at those options, and as a council, we need to make sure that we're being proactive and we're providing the opportunities for everybody to get those. The public-private partnerships have worked, like at the Parks and Rec building down on First Avenue, in that area there. You know, that is an example of where something's really turned out well. There's a discussion going on with the Mount Washington home now too, where maybe we can turn that into some sort of housing that could benefit all income levels. But to some of we need to be involved, and we need to be active to make sure that we do have affordable housing and safe housing.
I believe the council needs to address why housing might not be affordable in the area and how we can bring the prices down. I know of so many instances of people that live outside of Eau Claire, they drive into work, and it's just because of the cost, basically. Everywhere around us is cheaper, and we're going to need to take some new methodology, I believe, if we want to attract people from outside to actually move in here rather than to just come in from the out and go back to the cheaper prices, because that takes money away from the community of Eau Claire itself, and takes it out to these other cities and towns.
And Werthmann, District 5. One of the things we could do to make housing more affordable is make sure we have living wage. That's the other piece of this equation, is making sure that people have money in their pockets that they can spend. We have said no to a few developments in our city, and for good reason, I think. One of them was on Kane Road. It was a huge development that was going in, but we frankly didn't have the infrastructure to support it. It was up by Menards. And like almost the entire neighborhood came in and also said this is not fitting for that neighborhood. Another area was near Hamilton Road. We had a request just a couple months ago that I think we declined on a unanimous vote, and again, it was poorly designed, didn't fit the neighborhood. So we do, but I think it's for good reason. I think some of the things that we could do, and it's been pointed out that there have been some successes actually. The loft apartments that are down on First Ave is actually a case where I believe we sold the building for $1, and we were helpful in securing grants to make affordable housing there. Another thing that we could do as a city moving forward is making sure that we require a certain amount of new developments for affordable housing. And it doesn't need to be the whole thing, but it could be a certain percent. It was mentioned earlier on this panel that some of the students are going to be living without windows in their bedrooms. Design standards are actually something that I think we need to look at, and it doesn't have to be about raising the cost. One of the things that they found is many neighborhoods that don't have porches, if they're cheaper to build, but they don't have any way for folks to access in and out of the front, it's just a garage on the front of the house, that actually lowers the quality of life in those neighborhoods because people don't see each other. They don't hang out together. Those are the kind of design elements that I think we ought to be considering when we're building houses, not just is it really cheap, but how does this actually enhance and provide a better quality of life for folks who are moving to our community.
We're going to close our night. Kim has had to answer our questions here for the last hour and a half. Oh, I'm so sorry. We're not going to close our night. Never mind. I'll let you go.
Bob Von Haden, District 4. The city's role in ensuring a reasonable and acceptable quality of housing is to review all projects to see how they fit, how they fill a need, and to make sure they are compatible in the neighborhood. The building project must fit. You go from a single family to duplexes and twins to fourplex apartments to commercial. We take a look at those things to make sure it fits in. Are the city's services available at a reasonable cost? How does the project affect the current residents? The Jefferson Road project. Density, traffic, noise, impact on value of homes. The neighbors said it was a problem. They came to us, presented their information, and we turned the project down. They revised it, made it a little bit more acceptable to the neighborhood. Still not 100%, but it was better. That's what this is about. Good planning will always provide ample housing. You need to review our current housing stock and ensure it's meeting codes. That's the new housing thing. Work with landlords to improve and maintain facilities. Build all styles and quality apartments should be built so everybody who wants an apartment can afford it. And then emphasize on renovating and upgrading our old facilities. If we take a good look at all of our housing stock that we have in the city of Eau Claire, as they have talked about, this infill development is very important. We need that for our tax base, so our seniors can afford to live in their homes. We need to get more infill. This is important, but we need to provide it. We need all levels of apartments, and we need to be able to provide the subsidy for some of the people that can't afford to live in their homes. We have a housing department that works with low-income people, and so all of these things, it's all part and parcel of the package. So the more the city can get involved in helping the people, the better the city of Eau Claire will be.
Jill Christopherson, running for District 4. I think it's the affordability piece that's most urgent to me. There's been a lot of development, but it really prices the available housing outside of people that need the rental or need something that they can afford for a family of for, so the idea of how do you support the cost? I mean, how do you support, there used to be Section 8, we have very little of that money now. There's so many of our citizens that are spending more than their 30% a month towards their housing. So we really need to look at that part. So then look at where do you develop for people who have low income, first-time home buyers. They're going to want to be in some of the more inlying residences. Historic Randall Park is a wonderful place for families, but that has degraded because of so intense student housing. So I think that's a great place for us to be very imaginative of how do we provide incentive for people to recover that stock. The same way that we're developing in the Cannery District, where you can have mixed development there. I think that we have places where we can be very creative and we can bring together divergent economic stratas. We have a real issue. We have a lot of people that simply can't afford the housing. We have to be creative both on the ways of supporting them, but also having some fresh ideas of how we can provide housing.
As I was saying when I come to serve on Haden off. We've heard the candidates answer our questions here for the last couple of hours, and we're going to let them close the night by talking about whatever they want. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we'll kind of go back across again. We'll start with Jeremy Gragert, Kathy Mitchell, back across, and then around back.
All right, thank you to our sponsors for putting this on and giving us this opportunity. It's great to see a full stage here. We're really excited, particularly in my district where there hasn't been 2 people on the ballot since 2005, so I'm really excited to give people a choice this year and help people engage in their city and their elections. I've always looked at ways to find new ways to get involved, and this is the next step. And I've always found other ways for people to get involved and help involve folks in our city. The city's Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee was created around the time that I was just getting involved, so I was a big advocate for that, and I think it's helped move our city forward to create more bike trails and make our streets more bike and pedestrian friendly. I also was involved in the grassroots effort to create the Sustainability Advisory Committee, which has now kind of led the way for us to make a big commitment as a city to move toward 100% renewable energy by the year 2050. I do have a website if people want to find out more about me. It's gragertforcitycouncil.com. That's spelled Gragert. I live in a district that is pretty diverse and includes the university, the 3rd Ward, part of the East Side Hill, and the south side west of State Street. So I want folks to definitely feel free to reach out to folks in that part of town if you feel I'm a good candidate and you don't happen to live in my district. Again, my name is Jeremy Gragert, and I would really appreciate your vote on Tuesday, April 3rd. So thank you.
Serving on the city council is hard work. And since I've been on the council, I've been very impressed with the breadth and the depth of the issues that we have dealt with. For example, we approved a debt limit policy to control borrowing and a fund balance policy to preserve our savings. We approved a TIF policy and created and amended many TIFs to serve redevelopment in our city. We approved an update to the comprehensive plan, sponsored a neighborhood revitalization task force, and updated the housing code to include a rental registration program. We dealt with sidewalks and setbacks and bridges and streets, bicycle accommodations, and a place for a steam locomotive. We approved construction of a new fire station, a skate plaza for Boyd Park, Veterans Tribute Trail, Mount Washington ski jump expansion, ball fields at Jeffers Park, and finally sold the land to the YMCA for a tennis center on Menominee Street. We dealt with chickens and bees, the deer herd, pigeons, and dangerous dogs. We approved a solar policy, participation in Solar Connect, and dealt with it, and set sustainability goals for our city. We negotiated union contracts for police, fire, and transit and dealt with the consequences of Act 10. We approved contracts with group health insurance that have promoted employee wellness and kept costs down for the city. We approved a North Barstow parking ramp, the causeway into Carson Park, and the most recent part of the Confluence Project, the Haymarket Plaza, and a new bridge across the Eau Claire River. All of this takes a lot of time and work to accomplish. And I am pleased and proud to continue to provide this service to the Eau Claire community and to the citizens of District 3.
I'm Jill Christopherson, and I want to work for you on the Eau Claire City Council. I have to say how very intimidating and how informing it is to run for City Council. There's so much to learn and there's so much to experience, and just to build a context. So I really want to let you know what excellent leadership you have in your city government. But we also want to recognize that our future does not lie in our past. We have exciting opportunities that lay ahead of us. And creating a functioning and a dynamic future means that we're going to encounter more change. We're going to have to let go of some cherished memories, and we'll probably at some point have to say, gee, I remember how we used to do that. So I'm ready to move forward, and I think collaboration and communication are key elements of that. And that's what I will focus on in District 4, building relationships with the neighborhoods that I will serve there, and then to create that same open table at the City Council. But I want you also to notice, if you will, the number of young leaders that you're seeing at this table, and how exciting that is for us to invite that quality of leadership into our public sector. In my work experience, I have built leadership between and with generations, and I would bring that experience to the City Council. So I want you to know that I am ready to take on a new task, and that I would welcome your support as I run for City Council from District 4. Thank you.
Thank you to the sponsors of this candidate forum. A good evening to each of you who are here and to those who are watching on public access. When re-elected to the City Council, I promised to continue working with District 4 citizens to ensure their opinions are heard. Over the past 15 years, I have brought a civil attitude to the council meetings to help promote positive working relations. With my strong financial background, I have the knowledge and the experience to work with the staff and council members. Together, we can hold the line on expenses, debt, and taxes. Together, we can continue to work on attracting businesses that will employ our people and pay them a living wage with good benefits. My 52 years in Eau Claire as a homeowner with solid civic involvement provides me with the needed background and knowledge of issues that have happened over the years. This background and knowledge will help me in evaluating future proposals. Those who know me best will tell you that I am fair, hardworking, responsible, and a good-natured person. Now, why should you vote to re-elect Bob Von Haden? I have the time, energy, commitment, communication skills, and strong financial background, plus the desire to provide excellent service for our community. Over the next 3 years, we will be facing many major issues, increasing our need for economic development to attract more businesses, building the new transit center, new Menominee Street Event Center, and completion of the Cannery District, the Veterans Memorial Trail. I have always listened to the issue, then researched the issue. My decision is based on facts and comments at the time. And I will compromise to obtain the best result with citizen input and buy-in. I have a proven record of being available to you to listen to your concerns, to secure answers, and work to resolve them. Together, we will make Eau Claire even a greater city to live, work, and have fun in. Thank you, and I will appreciate your vote on Tuesday, April 3rd. Vote Bob.
Thank you, and I want to say thank you again for all of you for coming out this evening, and thank you to the sponsors as well. I have to say, over the times that I've run for City Council, this has been one of the most contested elections, and I think there's more interest than I've normally seen, which I think is really good, and it shows that I think people are paying a lot more attention to the governance that happens on a local level. And not only that, but how they can be involved in it. And you know, one of the things that I think that we ought to do more of as a city council, and I hope in the coming years we can look at creative ways of doing is actually engaging folks to a much greater extent. You know, I think when we look at our budget process, sometimes we only have 3 or 4 people come in and talk about the budget, but we make massive decisions every year, from everything to how much we're spending on parks and trails, how much our police department gets, the cleanliness of our water, all the different pieces to consider, and I think there's a lot of room for folks to get involved in that. Living wage is another one. And so I think what I'd like to see us do as a city council is build those bridges that really get more folks involved, get more people engaged. I had a chance actually this last year to work with a software developer who created a system where folks could go and simply look online to see if they have lead pipes running to their home. We have over 1,200 lead pipes that run into folks' homes. And at the same time, we actually got a grant from the EPA that would help replace those. And it was just last summer that I was able to walk down our street nearby, actually Emory, and see all these folks who were getting their lead pipes replaced. And you just recognize and realize this is what local communities and local government's all about. It's about trying to create a better place for folks to live, trying to do your best so that people have a meaningful life and experience. And I'm excited to hopefully be serving another 3. I think we'll be serving another 3 years on City Council.
I want to thank you all for coming out here tonight, and to anyone that's maybe listening. I'd like to see our government maintain a forward-thinking, very progressive, break the status quo kind of attitude, to have transparency, integrity, and to reach out to the people to find what they really want. If you like anything you've heard here tonight from any of the candidates or from me, feel free to vote on April 3rd and participate in the civic duties of every citizen. Thank you.
Again, thanks to all of you for being patient and sitting with us and joining us this evening. I've enjoyed this opportunity and look forward to the next couple of weeks campaigning. As a community, we should be grateful that there are this many talented people wanting to serve you as council members. If I am to be elected, I hope to continue growing as an effective council member. I hope to encourage the development of more affordable housing to meet our growing demand. I hope to continue my involvement with the Transit Commission and look forward to the work that lays ahead, building our new transit center. I hope to continue working with our neighborhoods, making them stronger and bringing them together even more. I hope to finalize our work on providing affordable transit fares for the lower income families. I hope to continue the work on ensuring safer streets and walkways for pedestrians and bicyclists and motorists. And with that, continued efforts to make Eau Claire a walkable community. I hope to be forward-thinking, continually being proactive, and conscious of our spending. In one of our media questionnaires we were asked to complete, there was a question of how I differ from other council members. What I learned these past 12 months is that this council and its individual members are all experienced, hardworking, and dedicated to this city. And the only way we differ is our personalities. And honestly, that diversity is what makes the city council so successful. 11 different people, 11 different ideas, needs, and priorities, all working together, representing you as best they can. I've lived here all these years because I love this city, and I'm here this evening because I love serving this city. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Emily Berge again. And thank you for the sponsors of the event and everyone for attending tonight. It's been, almost 2.5 hours. That's not bad, pretty good. So I've been working very hard over the last several months. I've been, since January, I've been door knocking almost every weekend. That's been an experience I've really enjoyed. I enjoy meeting people and having conversations, even when it's 5 degrees out and snowing. just gotta keep moving door to door. So I've also been having lots of one-on-one meetings, many times at Mom's Kitchen, getting to know my hopeful constituents of the north side, different business leaders. Again, I'm enjoying listening to what they have to say, their concerns, what's going well for our city, what they like about the north side. I've also spent time with the Eau Claire Fire Department and Rescue, did a ride-along with them, and then the Eau Claire Police Department, 2 ride-alongs with them. And that was a very eye-opening experience. And again, I concentrated on the north side. I rode with officers that focused on the north side and the Station 10. We went by the new station as well, and they're all very excited to move. So again, very eye-opening experience. I'm very impressed with them, our public safety workers. Now we'll continue gathering these experiences and hearing what people have to say, their day-to-day experiences. In fact, I plan to have regular listening sessions, if elected, for the people on the north side, my constituents. I know that I will make citywide decisions, but really as District 1, I would represent people that live on the north side, and I would take that very seriously. My name is Emily Berge, and if you live on the north side, I'll be on your ballot on April 3rd, and I just ask you to consider to vote for me so I can represent you. Thank you.
I'm Tim Tewalt. I'm the honor of being the council member in District 1 on the north side. Oh, we got a lot of good people up here. I'm excited for all of them. I'm excited for the choice. You know, I talked to some as they came in, and I greeted them because, well, it's the TAC, and you get to choose between cake and pie. Good things. A lot of good people up here. We look at experience and we look at age and we say something, where did that start? My world started with my favorite job, dishwasher. If I was a dishwasher, I knew I could always eat. I became a cook, then a warehouse laborer. Unloaded 15 tons of sand one day. That's work. Later went to tech school, started fixing things, wires, circuits, things that don't exist. Then I got into training people, help them know how to do it. When I was at Cray Research, the supercomputer firm, as you remember, at its height, my job, memorize everything and teach people every part of it. This head loves to troubleshoot, loves to solve things. But at the same time, it's about serving people. When I got asked to go for the appointment, it was about serving, and I love to serve. Monday, we had council meeting till midnight. Awesome. I can't tell you what that's like. And then Tuesday, we went till like 9 and talked. I'm dedicated. I put the time in. I communicate to my constituents. I'm valid in texting, email, any way. I work with people. I would love your vote. TimTewalt.com. Tewalt spelled like DeWalt Tools with a T and none of the money. TimTewalt.com. Read what other people have said about me, and thank you for coming out.
I'm so glad you're all still here. This has been a long night, but I like to think of it as actually a very short amount of time. If you think about the amount of time in human history when human beings have the opportunity to come together and actually decide what happens in their city, I mean, it's really incredible. I think about, my ancestors were, I'm guessing, peasants tied to the land with kings and queens, and here we are coming together to get to decide what happens in our community. And I just think that's miraculous. I'm so grateful for everybody here and for all of you for being here. I really believe in democracy because I think it's the form of government that can enable us all to participate and can enable us to all get stronger together. Eau Claire invested in me and my talents, which have paid off in terms of my own profession as a writer and an editor. And I want to invest in Eau Claire. I'm wearing this watch tonight, which was my grandmother's watch. My grandma and I had very different lives. She only had the opportunity to have an 8th grade education. She had to leave school and work on the farm. She was left a widow during the Great Depression with 2 kids and no real means to support them. And I think how amazing it is that in 2 generations, I've achieved the highest degrees in my field and have had lots of choice in terms of my career and developing my talents. So I'm running because I want to invest in people like my grandma. The difference between me and my grandma is that my community invested in me. And I want to grow Eau Claire's legacy of investing in people. And I'm Emily Anderson. I'm running to represent District 2, and I would love your vote on April 3rd.
I get the last word. I want to thank the candidate for District 4. I assume that she was referring to me as one of the young people, right? As I stated in my opening remarks, I am energized by the opportunity to be re-elected to the council. As we move forward, we will be met with significant challenges, no doubt, as well as exciting opportunities. Sometimes the latter are merely disguised as the former. In my career in management and as a city council member, it has always been my goal to be part of the solution, and I want to continue to do that. As a community, we've shown that we can do more together than we can separately. I think an example on the horizon of this will be the upcoming transit center. I think that there will be opportunities for a really spectacular benefit to our community with a public and private partnership. I respectfully ask for your vote on April 3rd, but equally important is that all eligible voters exercise their most valuable right as a citizen and go to the polls and vote. Thank you.
Let's thank all of our candidates for joining us.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire.
The spring election, Eau Claire's City Council Candidates Forum.
Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.